Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you are. Good morning, maybe. I don't know. Um, I don't actually know if anyone's in here at the moment, so I'm just going to hold on for a minute because I can't see my YouTube statistics for some reason. So if you are in here, can you please say something in the chat so I don't just assume I'm talking to myself because I think I'm just talking to myself at the moment. I'm not entirely sure. Let's find out because yeah, YouTube's just not giving me any information about what's actually going on, who's here, what's happening. It's like concurrent viewers, etc. It's just all like grayed out. Am I actually live? Don't know. The standard start to the Pop Power Man stream, anyway. Michael's in there, so someone's in there. YouTube is not telling me anyone's here whatsoever. So I apologise for this very faulty start, but YouTube isn't giving me any info whatsoever. But I can see the chat, so that's a good thing. Thank you for saying hello in the chat. Hello, Michael. Hi, Luke. Thanks very much for the heads up. I'm just like, am I talking to myself? Can hear you, but it's quiet. And let me try and move my mic a bit. Is that better? If I kind of lean down a little bit, speak to the mic a bit more. It's probably because I was looking at my other screen, so my voice isn't going into the mic. So hopefully that's a bit better. But yeah, here we are. We've got an hour to go before the deadline, and going into this. Actually, before I start waffling about my thoughts, I will just say I'm really sorry. I've genuinely just been very ill with a stomach bug this week, so I haven't had any team selection videos or anything like that up to this point. So I'm just about better. So bear with me if I'm just like a bit slow sometimes because yeah, I have been pretty unwell this week. So I apologise for the lack of content, but it's just life, isn't it? But yeah, I'm pretty much better, just about. But yeah, so gonna have a think about where we're going this week and leading up to this week, building into this weekend. I was very much like, oh, yeah, it's quite simple. In fact, I've got this sprint qualifying analysis. Let's throw it over to my team to start with. This is actually not my team because I was tinkering with Alex Albon. This is my team at the moment, and I was thinking, yeah, all set up, triple McLaren, 3 times on Lando, 2 times on Piastri, and job's done. Don't have to do anything. And then yesterday happened, and it's just pretty much carnage, just madness. Like everyone was spinning around in circles for the only practice session we get this weekend, and then the actual sprint quali was a bit of a mishmash, super close. Mistakes here, there. Poor old Lewis Hamilton with the yellow flag. I'll get onto Mercedes in a bit. Lando Norris down in P4. Do I really want to put the 3 times on him? Do I trust that McLaren have still got the race pace to dominate? Piastri, going track limits on that kind of turn 19 and being all the way back in P16. High potential for overtakes and positions gained. Can he make that happen in the sprint? I mean, he's not going to get a great opportunity necessarily. If he doesn't get a good start, it could be quite difficult for him, and it is a bit of a mishmash going into turn 1, so it does concern me slightly for Piastri. But as long as it stays clean, then I think Piastri should be on for a good amount of points. Every position he's going to make up will almost certainly be an overtake and a positions gain because no one's going to pit. So every position gain he gets will be an overtake. So it's basically like 2 points per position. And if he's in P16, I anticipate he should be able to get to top 10. So that's already like 6 times 2. He's getting 12 points, which is more than someone like Verstappen. If he just stays where he is and wins the race, he'll get 8 points. It's like Piastri's getting more than that just for going from P16 to P10, for example. So I do think Piastri is still fine, and it does make me still heavily consider the 3 times as a result, because I think all the way back to Austria 2023 when Perez messed up in qualifying and started way back, I can't remember where exactly, same sort of region as Piastri, P15, 16, something like that, and he came through and finished on the podium and he scored a mega haul of points. Can we see something similar for Piastri there? I don't know. I feel like he's in a good position as long as he doesn't come into contact, and he is lining up right next to Alex Albon, which does also make me concerned because Albon has a weird tendency in my mind to just crash on before turn 1. Sorry, there's a fly right in front of the camera. Right, let me see what's going on in the chat before I carry on waffling about anything. Just say hello. Thomas, hello. What's wrong with transfers? I can't buy a driver and leave 0-0 in the bank. Anyone else having this bug? I definitely don't know what's going on there. I'm afraid Milan, if anyone can help. If anyone else has had that issue, you should be able to make transfers as long as you can, maximise the budget. What do you recommend for Limitless? I'll be completely honest. I haven't thought too much about Limitless because I don't have the chip available to me. But if I was going to use it, I think I'd definitely have Verstappen on there. I think that's a pretty clear cut. In terms of constructor, definitely McLaren. Red Bull, just Perez, man. Perez puts me off Red Bull constructor if I was on Limitless. It does, but I think the sims for Limitless are supporting some Red Bull. But my gut feeling is I'd probably still prefer Ferrari or Mercedes over Red Bull. But it's close, it's tight. I'm not really sure about that. And then I think I'd definitely take a bit of a. Is it even a gamble on Lewis Hamilton? He's just so good round here. He got very unlucky with the yellow flag causing him to mess up his braking going into whatever turn that was. And then he all got messed up because of the yellow flag because of Colapinto spinning out. I do think that Lewis Hamilton very well could have been on for a potential pole yesterday. We could have been looking at like a 1-2. George was only 12 thousandths of a second off Verstappen. If he just increased it by that tiny fraction. And if Hamilton hadn't got the yellow flag, I know it's if this and if that, it's always the same thing, but we could have very well seen a 1-2 with Mercedes last night. And that's one of the reasons why I'm actually really strongly considering Mercedes myself, even though I don't need to. It's a tough one. I got a good, strong gut feeling, and that's not just a stomach bug kicking in again. I have a gut feeling that Mercedes might be the better pick over Ferrari, and I've even considered over McLaren, but I think McLaren are just too. I just don't want to interfere with the McLaren constructor, but I feel like Ferrari and Mercedes are like fairly interchangeable. And with the data that's come out on here from F1 Fancy Tools, they've released this new thing where you can look at the global top 500. You look at the ownership down here in the bottom left. Ferrari 89% owned in the top 500. Now my current rank, this is I suppose quite rank dependent on what your goal is for the season. My rank at the moment is about 3,400, so I've got an outside chance of getting top 1,000, maybe top 500 if things go extremely well. I don't really know the ins and outs of it. Lots of chips on the table, so everything's going to jumble about a little bit. And if I go with Mercedes, what a massive differential they are. The trouble is, Ferrari and Mercedes are likely to score pretty similar, but I just have a strong feeling the way George and Lewis are both so positively talking after sprint quali, saying this significant upgrade, as Andrew Shovlin has mentioned, big upgrade for Mercedes. Is it enough to push them ahead of the likes of Ferrari? Or has it just put them on par? Has it put them on par with McLaren's or ahead? Like I just alluded to a minute ago, we could have very easily seen a 1-2 Mercedes last night. Quite simple, in my opinion. So I am very tempted by Mercedes, but on the flip side of that, if I go Mercedes and I got that 10% and Ferrari do well and something bad happens to Mercedes, like a DNF or something, or heaven forbid a disqualification, I've gone there. If that happens, then I'm going to fall down the ranks big time. I'm never going to get the top 500, 1,000, whatever. I'm like, is that really worth the risk? Or, you could again flip that again and say, okay, if I do go with Mercedes and they just kind of score as expected, but then Ferrari catch a DNF, then suddenly I am jumping up the rankings. So yeah, just looking at that data is really interesting to see that Ferrari is so heavily owned in the top 500, and I imagine it's very similar across the top few thousand. So all the teams around my team at the moment are probably on this McLaren Ferrari build, which is a sensible thing. But Mercedes have come here, got a great upgrade. George Russell's in P2 for the sprint. Lewis Hamilton's in P7, but he very well could have been P1, P2. I think he set purple sector 1 before the yellow flag came out and messed things up for him. And we know Lewis Hamilton's an absolute beast around this track. He's so good. He basically just finishes P1, P2, P3 every time he turns up. So getting a bit of Mercedes coverage. They're also quite good in Mexico, which is coming up next. Maybe getting ahead of the curve. Is it getting ahead of the curve, or is it just taking an unnecessary risk? I don't know what you guys are thinking, but I probably don't need to take the risk. I could probably just sit on my Ferrari constructor, save a transfer. I'm looking at kind of either just doing nothing or potentially moving across Guan Yu Zhou to an Albon, and I'm not even convinced that Zhou to Albon is a great move, just because Albon I feel like is more likely to catch a DNF in terms of like a collision DNF, but I suppose Zhou is probably more likely to catch a reliability DNF, so maybe it's just kind of half dozen of the other, 6 or 1/2 dozen of the other. So maybe I could just do a 1 transfer, have 3 opened up going into the next race, and then just forget about Mercedes. But I am tempted, so I'm just gonna have a quick look at the chat to see if anyone's had any further thoughts on Mercedes and Ferrari, and see what everyone else is saying as well. Seems to suggest a Norris, Russell, McLaren, Red Bull, which threw me for a loop. Yeah. Excuse me. The Rita teams have me torn, says Luke. Yeah, my Rita team, the Rita team for my team basically says don't change anything. It was literally just left me as like triple up on McLaren plus Ferrari. Well, actually, I say that it actually recommended Mercedes for some reason, and then Ferrari were the second best team. But there you go. Albon or Lawson? Albon or Lawson? Michael asks. If I had the budget, let's say budget's not an option, you've got that extra couple of million to cover Lawson without like affecting the rest of your team. I think I'd be quite happy taking that kind of jumping on the Lawson choo-choo train for today. Let's look at the percentages here. It's on screen already. 51% Albon, 2% Lawson. So if Lawson does have a good race, then that's going to skyrocket you up in comparison to Albon. They're both a bit of a DNF risk where they're starting the sprint, but we know that Liam Lawson will be starting at the back of the Grand Prix tomorrow, which is very, very appealing because, Alex Albon, if he has a good quali, the way the Williams has done so far this weekend, I wouldn't be surprised to see it, to see Alex qualify in that annoying kind of P11, P12, P13 range. And he's in the meat grinder then for the beginning of the Grand Prix. Turn 1's a bit of a hatchet kind of job. It does concern me a little bit. Where meanwhile, like Liam Lawson will just be at the back, keeping out of trouble, hopefully, and working his way around. So yeah, I think if I had to, if I had the luxury of choosing between Albon and Lawson, I'd probably go towards Lawson. Unless you have any thoughts the other way, Michael. Let's see what else is going on. I only have wildcard fun. Wait, I only. Marta says I only have wildcard final fix autopilot and 3 times. There's 4 chips. There's only 6 races left. Start using them. Would you recommend using any of it? 3 times I think I'd prefer to use on Brazil or Qatar. Yeah, well, 3 times. Why don't we get straight into it first of all? Actually, well, I keep saying stuff like that. Get straight into it. Let's just quickly discuss the other ones. And then we'll get on to... Oh, Michael's just popped up. Oh my goodness, there's too much going on already. Michael is popping up with saying Albon starting from the pit lane in the sprint, according to Medlin over on Twitter. Let's have a quick look over there. Just bear with me 2 seconds. Oops, I've just clicked on the wrong thing entirely. Sorry, I'm just on my other screen. Oh yeah, I can see Chris Medlin. Pit lane start for Albon. In the sprint today, Williams have changed the specification of the rear wing on his car and have also adapted to suspension setup. So Albon goes from what, P18 to the pit lane. I mean, it does keep him out of trouble, but it also reduces his chances of overtakes and positions gained in the early stages. So it's a bit of like, keeps him well out of trouble for that turn 1 madness. Is the Williams faster than the Saubers? Almost certainly. So you could look at him potentially gaining those positions over Zhou and Bottas. So actually that's quite nice, I would say. It keeps Albon out of the way. The Saubers, despite upgrades, still looks slow. Yeah, maybe we get a couple of positions, a couple of overtakes, and Albon finishes the sprint on like 4 points. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he does better. But I feel like almost worst case scenario is obviously a disqualification or a DNF. But worst case, realistic scenario in my mind, or most likely scenario would be Albon just picks up like 4 points, 4 or 5 points, something like that. So actually, that's quite appealing to get Albon in the team with that news. Thank you, Michael, for that. Right, regarding chips anyway, how long have I got? Just over 45 minutes, and I've got a massive decision because I got the 3 times on the table here. I personally have got the 3 times and the autopilot left. I have considered the autopilot and I'm still on the table, as is the 3 times. Other chips from Marta. What else did you have? Final fix. It's impossible to know until we've had quali later tonight. So hold on. If you're not going to use a chip, if you're not going to use any of the other chips, then final fix may very well be a good one to use. What else have you got? Wildcard. It depends. Wildcard is completely team dependent. It just completely depends on what you've got and how many transfers you need to take to get to what you want to get. So yeah, basically you're left with kind of autopilot and 3 times is actually kind of what I'm left with, which was also probably what a lot of other people are left with. Maybe there's a couple of people out there with limitless left, maybe a couple of people with no negative, but I think a lot of people have probably still got their 3 times chip remaining, like I say, myself included, and I think that's a big thing for me that I'm deciding. Like I said at the beginning of the stream, going into this week, I was like, yep, 3 times, Norris, 2 times, Piastri, job done, move on. But now it's all a bit of a mishmash. There's upgrades have come in. The Mercedes look strong. The Ferraris look strong. Verstappen's back on top. The McLarens have not had a good qualifying whatsoever. Do we still trust that they are the strongest car? Of course, we've just come off just a few weeks ago, Lando Norris winning the Singapore Grand Prix by over 20 seconds. We can't forget that. We cannot forget that the McLarens were totally dominant. They have been dominant for many races now. The big question mark is, are they still dominant enough to warrant the 3 times this weekend? Have the other teams, i.e. Red Bull and Mercedes, who have bought these big upgrades this weekend, have they done enough? Are these upgrades enough to stop the likes of Norris and Piastri running away from everyone this weekend and scoring big on the 3 times? Like I said again earlier, Piastri is in a very good position, provided he doesn't have an ugly turn 1. I think he should certainly make up a few positions to roughly P9, P10 maybe. Anything past that is a great bonus. But I think he should definitely be able to achieve that with some slower cars ahead of him. And that's, like I said earlier, 12 points quite easily in the bag, 12, 14 or more points just for overtaking a few slower cars. That's really, really juicy as a 2 times option. And then you could 3 times Lando, who is likely, if the race pace, if you trust in McLaren's race pace, then he should go from P4, potentially even win the sprint. It's a possibility, which would be great. But even if he doesn't, and he's still on for 6, 7, 8 points, something like that, with a random overtake or position gain, hopefully. And then we've got the Grand Prix again, where the teams can make more various changes and to their cars ahead of qualifying later today, and then big points again on the table tomorrow. So it really does depend. The biggest question for me is, have the other teams, Mercedes and Red Bull and Ferrari, although they haven't bought upgrades, are they still in the mix enough? With Charles Leclerc, for example, ahead of Lando in sprint quali, have they done enough? Have these other teams done enough to put me off the 3 times? Because in reality, Piastri starting way back in P16 is actually... And now Albon's off his back as well. Albon's in the pit lane. And Albon, as I said at the beginning of the stream, a bit of a worry for me being right next to Piastri. But now Albon's out the picture. Maybe Piastri will have a bit of a cleaner turn 1, I don't know. Yeah, it's certainly interesting. Big question mark for me. Do I go for it? And I guess another question to ask myself is, if I don't go for it now, when am I going to go for it? The only other real options, you've got to put the 3 times on a sprint. So it's going to be Brazil or Qatar. Brazil always has me a little bit of the, gives me a little bit of the heebie-jeebies in terms of, it worries me in terms of it's a narrow track, it's a bit twisty, particularly at Sector 2, there's chance for collision, DNF, there's always the risk of rain being in that tropical area. Brazil just gives me a little bit, makes me a little bit nervous. However, it is also open up to potential for overtakes and a track that may well suit the McLarens well, so we could again be looking at Piastri Norris in Brazil. But again, if we wait past this weekend, it'll give us more of an idea for where these upgrades have put people in the pecking order. Are McLaren still ahead? If they are, then fine. It was probably the right decision to put the 3 times on them this weekend. If not, if the Mercedes is suddenly the best, or if Verstappen's back on top, then we know that information going forward and we can make a more tuned up decision for the 3 times come Brazil or Qatar. Qatar is one that I'm more interested in. If I don't go for the 3 times this weekend, Qatar is more interesting for me because it's a fairly safe track, I would say. It's a tough track, and I remember last year there was a lot of drivers, I think Logan Sargent, for example, even backed out because he just felt sick, and a lot of drivers getting so hot and dehydrated, and it's so much high speed, it's so strenuous on the body, it's a tough track for these drivers, but they should be fit enough to get through it, and they should be fine. And it is a quite a unique track because it's used for motorbikes mainly, and it's this high speed element where there's just multiple high speed corners should, in my mind, favour anyone who are at that point, because we don't really know with the upgrade situation at the moment, whoever is good in the high speed or whoever's the best in high speed corners should just be the best that weekend, and therefore we can make a more well-defined decision on the 3 times by saying, just as an example, McLaren are the best in high speed corners, which they have been in the past. Then it makes it a very much easier, safer, comfortable decision to go 3 times Norris, 2 times Piastri or whatever. So yeah, I do quite like Qatar for the 3 times if I don't do it this weekend. It's really hard. It's really hard. I think Yeah, I don't know. What's the time? 18:18 here. It's 20 past 6 in the UK here. Not got long to decide, but it's a tough one. I'm wondering what you guys are thinking. Let me just catch back up with anything in the chat. Bottas or Zhou? I'd probably go Bottas. He's starting right next to Zhou. So at least he hasn't qualified too well, so he's in a good position there as well in terms of positions gain potential in the sprint, even though I don't anticipate that Sauber's going very far at all. He's a bit cheaper, so he opens up a little bit more of a budget option elsewhere. But that said, Zhou has actually had some random positions gained. He's actually pretty good for positions gained just because he's so bad at qualifying and Sauber's so slow. He does randomly make up positions. That said, I can't imagine there's going to be many DNFs this weekend. So I can't imagine, let's say, likely scenario is that they both finish, P19, P20 later in qualifying. I can't imagine either of them moving up via DNFs come the Grand Prix because I just don't feel there's a very high DNF track, but I might eat my words now. I've said that I haven't had a safety car on 9 races or whatever it is. Maybe we're due. But yeah, I think I just about edge towards Bottas at this point, but it's you're picking from 2 bad apples really, so kind of tough. Let's see what else is going on. Here's the thing: Michael's speaking up with Oscar's places to make up today, and Norris in P4 in the sprint. Doesn't that make the 3 times more appealing? Maybe we are overcomplicating this with thinking Qatar. Yeah, that's kind of what I touched on earlier. The only trouble is, Michael, with that question or that thinking is, have McLaren still got the race pace to be better than everyone else? That's what concerns me with these upgrades. It's put an unknown element into my thinking. Like, is Red Bull and Mercedes upgrades enough to stop McLaren from just winning and dominating and scoring max points? It is appealing though. I will 100% agree with you that it's appealing because Piastri's way back in P16, whatever it is. It's P16, isn't it? Yeah, he's got Ocon next to him as well. Ocon and Lawson. He's going to be wedged between. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I am overthinking it. It's just I just don't know with real certainty how strong the McLarens are. But maybe I don't know. The only other downside to waiting for the Qatar is it's the last sprint race of the season, and if things don't line up, if things are still muddled for whatever reason come Qatar, then it's going to be literally just like, oh well, I'm just going to put the 3 times on someone and hope. Whereas now we still think McLaren are probably the strongest. And looking at the if we hop it over, if I can hop it over to here with the official F1 clarification of the sprint qualifying analysis, you can see how ridiculously tight that is. Ridiculously tight. And that's kind of what I'm anticipating potentially could happen come Qatar, and we just don't have a clue who to put the 3 times and the 2 times on come Qatar. So maybe it's better to just push our chips into the middle of the table now. Like you say, stop overthinking it. McLaren's, like I said, they dominated for the last few races. Norris won by over 20 seconds in the race just last out. Who's going to bring upgrades that are going to overcome a 20 plus second deficit in one fell swoop? So maybe the McLarens are still just going to be the best. And it does say in this article, McLaren the quickest. McLaren bought their own upgrades as well. So even though Lando Norris, as always, talked it down a bit in his interview last night, but it does say down here, nonetheless, McLaren, who are strongest of all in the medium speed terms, which is kind of interesting, not the high speed, which they have been notorious for over the last year or two, remain a very strong position, not only for the sprint, but also qualifying and the Grand Prix, as they lead the way in both one lap and long run pace. The trouble is there's going to be all sorts of different setup changes. The FP1 was a complete mess, people spinning around and stuff. Setup changes have been changed dramatically. So the likes of Mercedes, as an example, race pace, are a complete unknown. It's a complete unknown because Mercedes completely changed their setup from practice 1 to sprint quali, and they're a lot more comfortable with it. So are the Mercedes race pace actually going to be better? So this paragraph could effectively be nonsense. We just don't know. That's the beauty and the pain of F1 fantasy. We just don't know. We don't know enough. All we can do is put our best guess and cross our fingers, and once the deadline hits, you just kind of suck up whatever comes your way. Let's face it can't really get any worse. I'm probably going to jinx it now. It can't really get any worse than last year, right? All those people that put limitless users last year, and I triple DRS boosted last year as well, and I put the 2 times on the poor old disqualified Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, I'm going to bring that up right now. I'm sorry for all you people that are scarred by it, but what's the worst that can happen at COTA? Surely not going to happen again. Right. Let's just hop it back to the team for a second. So this is what I'm looking at the moment. I'm still tempted by those Mercedes, but I'm not sure. I'm not feeling the love for the Mercedes at the moment. Shall we? Let's do a quick poll just to get a rough feel of how you guys are feeling. I did talk up the Mercedes quite a lot earlier. Mercedes versus Ferrari. So we can just put in here Merc or Ferrari. And you can vote and tell me where you're thinking. I have a feeling I know where this vote's going. This will probably bias the votes right now, but I think a lot of people will probably stick with Ferrari. I just have this sneaky little gut feeling that Mercedes are just going to be better. I just have a feeling that Mercedes is going to be better, so maybe I should just go bump and bump. Maybe. I will say one other thing of the Ferrari versus Mercedes. Hopefully you can just about see this. It's not been covered up by anything. So you can see on screen here, you've got the Ferrari and Mercedes. Ferrari are 24.7. So another 0.3 rise this weekend. We'll see them hit the A tier status, which means they will no longer be gaining too much value. And I know value is kind of off the agenda a little bit. We're much more focused on just points at the moment, fair enough. But it's still something to think about, that you'll then have you have two A-tier constructors, whereas Mercedes, unless they have an absolute insane weekend, then they're safe for a few more races to keep getting more value. So I could just use up my 2 free transfers. It would be nice to have 3 opened up for Mexico, but I can't imagine it changing too much more than this unless something drastic happens this weekend. So I am kind of tempted, but on the back of what I was saying earlier, anyone that's just joined the stream, looking at the top 500 data here, where McLaren and Ferrari are heavily owned, and going against that is both appealing and scary to me. So if anything happens to my Mercedes assets, if I pick Mercedes, it's going to sink me potentially several thousand positions, quite likely. But if I just stick with the masses, and go Ferrari and Mercedes, Ferrari and McLaren, I keep getting these mixed up. Both begin with M, so they're just rolling off the tongue. If I stick with Ferrari and McLaren and they both do well, it's like, fine. I stick with the masses. I don't fall back, but I don't really climb. Going to that differential Mercedes, it looks appealing. And I just have that gut feeling. I have a gut feeling about Mercedes, and I don't want to be kicking myself after the deadline. If the deadline goes and I wish I'd just gone with Mercedes, that Lewis Hamilton prowess around here, George Russell starting in P2, I don't know, it's just something about it is just calling to me. Anyone else feeling that? Let's have a look at the polls. No, not many people, only 29% of people feeling that at the moment. That's fine. Let's have a quick look here. Cool. Yeah, 2/3 now. Yeah, we got a couple more Mercedes voters. Come on, everyone in the chat. If you are able to vote, please do so, just so I get a bit more of a feel. I think the safe option is probably just stick with Ferrari, stay with the masses. You still got 6 races. It's not that long to go, but it is still quite long to go. So maybe it's to stick with the masses. Save your transfer. Have 3 opened up going to Mexico. You're in a great position to tweak as needed on the back of these upgrades this weekend. However, when your gut tells you something, sometimes you just have to go with it. And I am kind of liking the Mercedes. Am I gonna look back on this? If I end up going for this and it's a disaster, I will load up this stream, the recording of this stream, and I'll go back to this moment, and I'll look back at my past self, my current self, but will be my past self, and I'll just be like, Tom, why did you go through with it? If I only had a time machine. But anyway, we could probably say that most weekends. Right, let's have a quick look at the chat. Yeah, Michael Furman is talking about Charles here, how good Charles is here. Charles is also good. I just got a bit of the blinkers on with Lewis Hamilton. So yeah, you're right. Maybe I should do what I've just alluded to, which is to keep that 3rd free transfer open and just going like this. Stick with the masses until we know a bit more. I just don't know though, Michael. I have that gut feeling. People still voting. I'll give it a couple more minutes for people to vote on that. Let's see what else is going on in the chat. A few things I've missed. I apologise for my waffling. Mint 758. Yeah, so you're praying for DNFs, using the no negative, and hoping that people that have used their free times DNF. I just don't see this track as a particularly high DNF thing. There's lots of runoff space. It's going to be a dry weekend. Yeah, I'm just not sure there's going to be a great deal of opportunity for crashes other than turn one is a bit nasty. But then you can say turn one is nasty for most tracks, to be honest. What's next? Yeah, we've got Mexico coming up next. That's got a fairly nasty turn one as well. Yeah. By all means, if you want to go a bit differential and use no negative and hope for the best, then do it. But it might be better using no negative around somewhere like Brazil, where I just feel like the DNF risk is higher. Caesar Khan says all data suggests that all 4 top teams are way too close. I don't think I can risk my free times on it. That's it. That's the thing. That's what it boils down to. That it's so close. Do we trust that McLarens are still strong enough to push through and maximize our points of the 3 and the 2 times? I just don't know. That's a good point. Like, come post deadline, if I right now click on 3 times Lando Norris, 2 times Oscar Piastri and sign it off, would I look back at that and think, yeah, I'm comfortable with that decision? I'm not sure I would. I feel like I'd be like, yeah, kind of comfortable. I feel like I'd be kind of comfortable. I've been leaning that way like all week, and should I let like a one Friday's worth of happenings throw that up in the air? It is tight, but then is it also going to be tight around Brazil? Is it also going to be tight around Qatar? Is there going to be much of a better opportunity? This is a track you can overtake on. We get to Qatar and if things go pear-shaped, it's not a great track for overtaking. So we could see, if we go 3 times Norris, 2 times Piastri around Qatar because we think it's best, and they're smashing through the practice sessions and sprint quali and it all looks great, and then they have they mess up and they can't get back through the field and they end up with like 20 points instead of the 40 or 50 that you want them to get. Maybe now, if things go wrong on a track that you can overtake on, it is just a decent proposition for the 3 times. It's a real tough one. It is a real tough one, a lot tougher than I thought. And I was, like I said, building into this weekend, not set on, but fairly set on using the 3 times, and it's still on the, my fingertips to use. Can I justify it? Would I be happy with it? I think just about. I think if I go for it, I'll just about be content with the decision, and I won't look back with regret or anger. But it's a close one. It's a close one. If it goes wrong, if I go 3 times and it goes wrong, am I going to look back and be like, oh, why did I put the 3 times on? It was a stupid thing. We just didn't know enough. There wasn't enough information. I can't believe Verstappen's won again. I can't believe Norris has DNF'd again. I can't believe Piastri's got his first DNF of the entire season when I put the 2 times on him. It's a possibility. It's a real possibility, but it's a risk. It's a risk that we just have to get on with, basically. I'm sorry, I've got loads more chat stuff on here. Let me have a quick follow up with the chat, and then I need to have a proper think about what I'm actually going to do with my team. I've only got half an hour to go. So have a quick look at the chat. Bear with me. Let's have a look then. So we've got Lavan. Hey, currently I have Norris, Sainz, Albon, Colapinto, Bottas, McLaren and Ferrari. Yeah. Do you think it's worth changing to Norris, Russell? So you're switching Sainz to Russell and Albon to Tsunoda? It's a bit of a sideways transfer, that looks to me. I'm not sure. Like, yeah, if you trust in Mercedes and you think Russell's gonna do it this weekend over Sainz, then fine. I do believe that Sainz has started every sprint this year so far in P5 and finished P5, and guess what? He's currently in P5 again, so the odds are Sainz is going to get a P5. So if you think Russell's going to finish above him, maintain his P2 or maybe even overtake Verstappen with his upgraded Mercedes, then do it. Could be worth it. Russell's also slightly cheaper, I believe. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, he's still quite a bit cheaper, 1.3 million cheaper. So it could open a bit more budget options going forward as well. So potentially, I don't hate it, but it's potentially also a little bit sideways. Kenshin says, "Hi Tom." Hi Kenshin. I'm currently having Norris, Russell, Albon, Bottas, Colapinto, McLaren, Ferrari, 1 million in the bank, free transfers. Can't afford triple McLaren. What is your suggestion? Let's have a quick look at that team again. So Norris, Russell, Albon. You can't do too much of that. You've kind of already got the bottom assets there. You could potentially swap down Albon to a Zhou and then upgrade a Russell. I'm not sure if that quite gets you enough. With the million plus the extra money from an Albon to a Zhou, how much is Albon? He's 8.8 and Zhou's, it's only a million difference. So that's basically gives you 2 million. So from 2 million, where can you go with George Russell? You can go up to 23.7, so you can only improve a George to a Sainz or a Perez, and like I've just sort of said to the other person in the chat, it's a bit sideways. I think I'd probably just hold on to George there. To be honest, yeah, I'm not sure much more you can do. I think your team's already good. You're in a similar sort of boat to me really as well, except you've got kind of Russell over Piastri. But yeah, I think Russell could be a good shout this weekend with the Mercedes upgrades. Jetto say I'm thinking going McLaren, Red Bull actually would have the same team as you, but Red Bull instead of Mercedes. Wow, you must have a whopping budget, Jetto. Whopping budget. What's your best team if you can only afford one premium? One premium, so that means you're going to have everyone probably Stroll and below. I probably wouldn't touch Stroll and below. Magnussen, possibly, just because the Haas looks really good and he is just generally good for overtakes. Lawson, almost certainly I would go for Lawson because he's starting at the back on Sunday. It's just a great position to be in for a budget driver. Sonoda, he's in a bit of a iffy position. He might climb one or two positions, but he's also very susceptible to just drop in, so I'm not sure about Sonoda. Definitely, I think Franco Colapinto is a great shout. He's so cheap. He enables lots of budget increases elsewhere. He keeps rising 0.5. He's still low owned relatively across the game. Yeah, I think probably Colapinto, Magnussen, Lawson, and then maybe someone like Ocon again for the overtake potential and the fact he's starting quite far back in sprint quali. Yeah, it's slim pickings back there, I'm afraid. What else have we got in here? Piastri, triple McLaren, or Leclerc and Norris. Well, you can see by my team at the moment, I'm kind of neglecting to go anywhere near Leclerc at the moment. It would be literally a very easy same price move to bring him in, but I think I'm quite interested in the likes of Piastri to stay in my team because he's starting so far back and it gives that opportunity for positions gain and overtake. So, and we saw what happened in Baku when Lando Norris started way back. He was able to make up those positions, albeit wasn't that easy for him. And he did obviously get helped out by the safety car in the end. It did take him a while to get up through the field. But I would say COTA is probably slightly easier track to overtake on. And he's gonna have a few slow cars ahead of him. So I still trust in Piastri, to be honest. I'm trusting in the triple McLaren. Another thing I could do if I just reset my team for a second. Another thing I could do, which is potentially a bit mad, is to bring in Verstappen and I can afford George Russell. I could do that with 2 moves. That's quite tempting because Verstappen's starting a pole in basically a few minutes, and George Russell was starting right behind him. So as long as they don't take each other out, they could very well finish, on 8 and 7 points, 15-pointer right there. But at the same time, if we reset to my original team, Piastri starting in P16, as long as he stays out of trouble and makes up a few spaces, he's going to probably outscore the likes of Russell and Verstappen for this sprint. And then as long as they can sort out their quali later on in a few hours' time, then I think the likes of Norris and Piastri are just lined up to be stronger this weekend. So yeah, I don't know. Time's running out. I need to have a think about the free times in a minute. I'll have a quick look at a couple more things in the chat. Then I'm going to have a proper knuckle down within my own brain and have a think about what I want to do, because it's a big potential turning point. It's either this weekend could shoot me up the ranks, or it could destroy the season. It could end the season. If I 3 times and it's wrong, it could end my season. And when I say end it, I mean end all hopes of a reasonable top 1,000 or whatever. If it's a disaster, I'm going to sink down to the lower echelons of the top 10k, and I don't know. It could be horrible. What else we got in the chat? Welcome. Oh, thank you, Davi, as a new member, Davi Ribeiro. Thank you very much. Welcome to Pop Power Man's cult. Let's just quick look at this poll as well. Yeah, so ultimately Ferrari have won that poll by quite a country mile. Do I follow my gut? At the moment, I'm kind of set on switching out Zhou for Albon, particularly as he's starting in the pit lane. and potentially going with kind of just this. The only other option is, do I want to drop Ferrari to Mercedes? And a big part of me says yes, but Sainz and Leclerc are not like just random people that have turned up for a karting day. They are good drivers and they're in a good car. It hasn't had any upgrades, but the Ferrari still looks good around here. As Michael alluded to a few minutes ago, Leclerc has a good record around here as well. Maybe just sticking with the Ferraris for one more race, having 3 transfers going into Mexico, and if Mercedes do smash it, then I miss out. But again, I keep thinking back to this data that's just coming out from Fancy Tools. Look at it. I can't help but just look at this and say that the top 500 down here in the bottom left, 99% with McLaren, fair enough, but 89% with Ferrari. 89% with Ferrari and only 10% with Mercedes. That's a massive differential if Mercedes are the team to go for, and it's almost making me think back to Silverstone last year where I was like, oh, should I go with McLaren? They look quite good, and I ended up dropping Stroll for Piastri for an 18-point swing. That's how much it sticks in my memory. I remember the exact number of points that it affected me by, but I don't know. It's probably sensible just to stick with Ferrari. It's probably sensible, but is it also just a bit more fun going against the tide a little bit? And correct me if I'm wrong, but is this game supposed to be fun? It's been so long, I can't remember. Is this game fun? Is anyone else having fun? Or is it just pure stress, anxiety, nervousness, devastation, upset? Is there fun hiding in here somewhere? Maybe the Mercedes is my secret to fun this weekend. Maybe I'll go there. And it might be wrong, it might backfire, but I would have trusted my gut, and I feel kind of better for trusting my gut. And if it goes wrong, then at least I can blame my gut. I don't know. Let's have a quick look in the chat. See what else. Anything's going on. Let's go right to the bottom. I can only afford Piastri and Sainz. Who would you put the 2 times? Oh, if you can only afford Piastri and Sainz, I'd definitely put it on Piastri personally. Although it's a bit risky of him starting in that meat grinder area. I think he's got high potential with those positions gained overtakes. And he should be, hopefully better set up for qualifying later on and finish well in the race. So, Vinicio, I'd definitely say Piastri for that one. Norris versus Verstappen for a 1 premium team. If you can afford Verstappen, I think he looks like a potentially good bet this weekend. He's starting on pole. I would anticipate he's got a reasonable chance of retaining that lead through the sprint. I'm not sure. It's just so hard to know of the unknown race pace quantities. But yeah. Tyler's just joined in the stream. Is the team on screen locked in? It is not, but it's highly tempting for me. I'll show you, Tyler. This is my team at the moment. This is what I've got at the moment. And I'm looking almost certainly to go Guan Yu Zhou out for Albon. The sensible thing to do would be to leave it there, potentially still putting the 3 times on. So I haven't decided, but the sensible thing would be is to leave it there, carry 3 transfers into the next race. But I am tempted, as I've talked about quite extensively, by the Mercedes, and it's probably a stupid risk. It's probably an unnecessary risk. But there is a big differential, 10% owned in the top 500 compared to pretty much 90% of Ferrari managers are owning Ferrari. It's a huge differential if the Mercedes are actually as good as they potentially are. Well, at least the Mercedes are that good in my mind. I don't know if they're really that good in reality, but I'm potentially willing to take a gamble on Mercedes this weekend. To go against the grain a little bit. It seems like a bit of an unnecessary risk because if the Ferraris do well, then I might be kicking myself. And yeah, I'll almost certainly drop down the ranks, but it also could be a little way to just claw up a few more points on those above me, potentially, if we're just going against Ferrari a little bit, where it's not clear. It's not like clear cut Ferrari are better than Mercedes. It's not clear cut in my mind this weekend that Ferrari are better than Mercedes. I would say they're almost level par. So when they're level par, do you want to stick with the masses? Do you want to stick with what everyone else is doing, or what 89% of other teams around you are doing? And if they do well, meh. If they don't do well, meh. Everyone owns them. But if you go against that grain and you go Mercedes, if they do well, then if Mercedes outscore Ferrari even by like 10, 15 points, then you're really happy with that decision because you've gained 10, 15 points on the vast majority of teams around you. Of course, flip side is if something bad happens to Mercedes and you don't score well, then you're absolutely mudded for the whole weekend. That's kind of game over. And it is important to get the right constructors on the sprint weekend. So it is a risk. It is certainly a risk, but it's a calculated risk. It's one of those gut feeling risks. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of like it, Tyler. Don't know what you think about it. Most of the rest of the chat didn't like it. I think the poll I did ended up on roughly 70-30 in favour of Ferrari. But there we go. What we got? 4:43. It's 6:43 here, which means I've got just over 15 minutes to lock this in. I need to have a proper thing. One last quick scan of the chat in case there's anything outlandish happening, and then I'm gonna have to have a proper think up here. I'll try and voice what I'm going through, and then I'll lock in what I'm doing. So just bear with me 2 seconds. Let me just have a look at the chat. Let's have a quick look on Twitter as well. Sorry, bear with me. So I just had a quick look on Twitter. Apparently Zach Brown has said Mercedes seem to be the team to beat after Russell and Lewis's lap yesterday. He talks about Mercedes having the dominant car. He says the talks about them having the dominant car isn't the case because any of the top 4 cars can win. So Zach Brown is now saying he's not sure the McLaren are dominant. Oh, God. Oh, dear. Need help to simulate the best team. I can certainly do that for you, Davy. If I open up F1 Fancy Tools, bear with me. How much is your budget? 119.8. So I'm just off screen at the moment, but I'm going to drag this on. I can drag this on at the moment, actually. Let's pull this over. Have a look at the team calculator. So if we go 119.8, let's have a quick look. This is what the Sims are saying for 100. Whoa, 199. That didn't come out right, did it? Your eyes probably lit up for a moment there. 119.8. Let's just change that to a 1. 119.8. Recalculate that. There you go. That's what the Sims are saying for 119.8 McLaren Red Bull. Really interesting. I mean, obviously that's heavily favouring the likes of Verstappen, but yeah, if I had that budget. Yeah, I mean, you can't. The trouble is, it's quite a low budget because you can't really do much with these other drivers. You're stuck with these heavy hitters, so you're kind of trusting in Perez to put his socks up, trusting in Verstappen to stay ahead of the game across the sprint, and yeah. But then you could drop like Red Bull to Ferrari or Mercedes, but then again, we still don't know for sure who the best is there. So it's a really tough call. Really tough call. Right, I'm going to take one more suggestion, then I'm going to lock in my team. So, hi Tom, thank you for your suggestion. Would you prefer Lawson or Albon over Albon? Yes, I think I still prefer him. Albon is starting at the back for this sprint. If anyone's coming in just now hasn't heard already, Albon's starting in the pit lane. But then likewise, Lawson's starting at the back of the Grand Prix. And starting at the back of the Grand Prix is more appealing because there's more chance for positions gained, more chance of DNFs ahead of him. So it's better to start at the back for the Grand Prix than it is for the sprint. And yeah, I just think also Lawson's a bit of a differential. So, I think Lawson, if I had the luxury of Lawson over Albon, I'd go for it. But right, I need to have a proper think. Let me just reset my team for a second. I'm going to be ignoring the chat for a few minutes because I've got just over 10 minutes for one of the biggest decisions of the season for me. This is my current team. Okay, need to have a think. Do I want to go first? I think first things first. I'm not changing the triple McLaren. First things first, I am changing Zhou to Albon. That's happening. Right. Now, past that, my options that I've, shoehorned myself into is either leave it as this and just leave it. Make the transfer, done. Past that, I'm going to look at moving Ferrari out for Mercedes because I have a gut feeling that Mercedes are just going to edge it. They just fill me with confidence. I just call it a gut feeling. That's literally what it is. It's gut feeling. There's not much more to it than that, other than they looked really strong in sprint quality last night. And they've had a big, both Russell and Lewis were speaking really positively after sprint quality. The car feels great. they don't normally say that. They normally say, yeah, it's okay. Well, the balance isn't quite right. Not really happy with the mechanics. They made too many changes, but they were beaming. They were like really, really happy, and that fills me with confidence as well. When both drivers are saying, yeah, they feel comfortable in the car. And if Lewis starting in P7 today could certainly make a couple of overtakes, a couple of positions gained potentially. He's great around this track. It could boost up the Mercedes a little bit, a bit of a differential against Ferraris. It's a big risk. It is a big risk because if it backfires, all the teams around me, 90%, according to the F1 Fancy Tools numbers, 89, 90% of the teams around me and ahead of me are back in the Ferrari constructor. So if the Ferraris outscore Mercedes, I'm just conceding points. But I'm ranked 3,000-ish. We've got to look for those edges. So it does also use up my second transfer. It does stop me from having 3 transfers going to Mexico. So if the order has shaken up, then it concerns me a little bit that I only have two transfers. But then what am I going to do? I've already got like more or less the 3 cheapest guys here. Like going into Mexico, all I'm likely to do is like switch out someone like a Piastri to a Leclerc or a Piastri to a Sainz or whatever it is. I can't see my team changing that much. I can't really see necessarily having 3 free transfers is that important this weekend. So maybe just taking this gamble and trusting my gut on Mercedes, and if it goes well, then woohoo! If it goes badly, then I hold my hands up and I say, I trust my gut and I feel good and content with that decision. So I don't know if I've talked myself into it by trying to explain my thought process to you, but I feel if I want to be sensible and boring, basically, which is normally a good way to play fantasy, not going to lie, if I want to be sensible and boring, I should just leave the Ferraris in there and not touch it. If they do badly, then kind of everyone does badly. It's whatever. If they do well, it's whatever. It's kind of like a dead asset. Putting the Mercedes in there opens me up to risk, but it also opens me up to potential for gaining positions. And I just have that gut feeling. I just have a gut feeling that they're going to jump up there. I know I keep whittling on about this gut feeling, but yeah, I think I'm going to go for that. I think I kind of talked myself into it. Much time? Yeah, exactly 10 minutes to go. Plus, I still got to work out the 3 times or not. So I think we're going to go. Let me just quickly check over on X to see if there's any more news. If anyone's got any more updates for anything that's going on, because I've not got the TV on. As soon as this stream's over, I'm going to be going straight downstairs to watch TV. Just seeing if there's any other last minute news that we need to know about. Kevin Magnan says it feels hot. It changes a bit the balance when it's hotter. Yeah. So how does that affect Mercedes? They haven't always liked it when it's hot, have they? There's always something to put doubt in your mind. Yeah, not much else happening over on Twitter from what I can see. I've just seen in there Dionysus, I am surprised you're not using any Mercedes asset. It's like, yeah, well, I've almost convinced myself to lock in the Mercedes, so, and it does seem a bit of an unnecessary transfer. It does feel a bit sideways, it opens myself up to risk, but I also want to have fun, and I think I'd have fun back in Mercedes watching this weekend, and B, I just have that gut feeling that they're going to do well, so screw it. We're going to go with it. It still leaves 1.1 in the bank. I'm going to make these transfers with 8-9 minutes left, and that gives me a few more minutes to just decide finally on my final chip. So we're going to make these transfers first. 3 transfers, 2 of 2, additional transfers made, 0 points lost, good. So we're swapping out Zhou for Alex Albon, who's starting in the pit lane, staying out of trouble, which is nice, and hopefully we'll overtake those Saubers nice and cleanly and get me a couple of points in the sprint, hopefully, Alex. And then this is my joker, my wild card here, going Ferrari to Mercedes. It's a bit of an unnecessary transfer, but I like it, and I'm going to do it. There we go. So this is my team, and now I've got a final decision to make on using the 3 times or not. Do I want to do it? I need to think. Sorry, it's going to be a boring few seconds whilst I literally just think. The only other options are Brazil and Qatar. Brazil makes me nervous because it's rain, tight track, DNF potential, safety car potential. Makes me nervous about 3 times. So for me, it's probably going to be Qatar if I don't go for it right now. Would I be happy with Qatar? There's potential. There's less overtake potential if things go wrong for your driver. So if they mess up qualifying, they might struggle to make through the field, and your 3 times could fall flat. Whereas at least here they've got a chance to overtake. So actually, maybe it's safer to go 3 times now. It's also Qatar is like the second to last race of the season. Could have more old engines rattling about. Could have more DNF potential. It is so tight though, and there's unknowns about upgrades. There's unknowns about whether McLaren are still the dominant team. If I go for it, I'm putting the 3 times on someone that's starting P4 today, and the other guy's starting P16. But Piastri I've already talked up Piastri quite a bit. I really like him as an asset, so being able to put the 2 times on him whilst I 3 times Lando could very well give me a good boon. And, I did 3 times round here last year. What's the worst that can happen? Oh, God. How much time have I got? Less than, just 5 minutes. I think with 5 minutes to go, I'm about 51% using the 3 times and about 49% saving it for Qatar. So maybe that 1%, maybe that just tiny feeling that I should just go for it now is enough to tip things over. And maybe the 3 times this weekend, 3 on that Lando and 2 on Piastri, is enough to negate any damage that not having Ferrari is this weekend. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. There is not a right or wrong answer because we're dealing with complete unknowns. Where if we wait to Qatar, there'll be some other unknown that we're not sure about. Yep. Yeah, and the McLaren boys haven't had the great feeling with the car. Don't know. Lewis Hamilton was so fast through Sector 1. Could we see the Mercedes good and high speed, and therefore Mercedes are worth tripling up on come Qatar if their upgrades are really as good as I'm making them out to be? Oh, this is tough. Anyone got any last minute thoughts? This last couple of minutes. I don't want this decision to overrun and make my decision based on running out of time. So I need to make this decision. I need to be happy with this decision. Otherwise, I'm going to look back with regret at this moment. So, autopilot's still an option, but I think I'm going to save the autopilot for. I think I'm going to save the autopilot for something like Brazil, where like I've alluded to, use it a bit of a safety belt in terms of Brazil being a bit of a trickier track. I think I might just save the autopilot for them. Extra DRS. Lando, Piastri. I think I'm feeling away from it. I'm almost moving back from the screen. I think it is a good opportunity. There's risk doing it now. There's risk to come with Piastri in that position. As long as he stays out of trouble in turn 1. Should get those few positions. Doubling up on them is pretty nice if they can sort out qualifying. But it's also really unknown. It's really unknown, those upgrades. Oh god, this is so hard. Pole. Oh yeah, I could do a pole, but there's only like a minute left to do to do it. Go for it. Start a poll. Vote now because I'm gonna have about a minute left. So, in the same way that I've got this gut feeling about Mercedes being good this weekend, I've almost got this little bit of gut feeling saying hold off on the DRS as well. I don't know though. It's tempting with Piastri being that far back. It's tempting. Limitless. Would you use the limitless? I don't. It's team dependent. That it's again. If I had Limitless, I probably wouldn't because it's too hard to know who the best five are. It's team dependent. It depends how many chips you got left yourself. Right. If I don't use it now, I'm using autopilot in Brazil, and I'm 3 times, and in Qatar I'm kind of shoehorned into that. But I think that's fine. I think that's fine. And what a differential it will be in Qatar. I think a lot of people would use it today. The masses will go with it today, I think. Those that have got it left. And I think come Qatar, when we got good information about who the best team is, there won't be any upgrades around then. We'll know who's good around there. And I can just put my bankers on, shoehorn in the 2 best drivers. Yeah, I think I've talked myself out of it. I think we're backing down from the precipice. We're backing down, everybody. We're backing down. Wow, look at that. You guys are about as helpful as my own brain. I said earlier I was about 51% yes and 49% no. It's pretty much the same in the poll as well. Yeah, I think I'm taking a step back. I'm not going to 3 times. I think I'm kind of boxing myself in here to an autopilot around Brazil. That's my current plan. And 3 times, my final chip will be played in Qatar. That's what we're going with. Lando Norris on the 2 times. Piastri's tempting, but papaya rules and all that. Norris is the 2 times. So, yeah, there we are. I think that's my team, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the stream. I hope it hasn't been too much just me going, I don't know what to do. But I'm happy with my decision. Whatever happens now, I can look back. If McLaren smash it, then kudos to everyone that went with the 3 times. But I've still got that in my pocket. And come Qatar, it's going to be an easy decision. I'm going to put in the 2 best drivers and it's going to work for me. It'll be magic. It'll be brilliant. So yeah, thanks very much for listening to me on this stream. I think that's pretty much it, and the race is about to start. So shall we go watch a race? Let's have some fun. Good luck, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me. If you haven't already, subscribed, like, etc. And I'll catch you next week because we've got another race next week. So yeah, thanks very much. And good luck. Thank you very much for spending your time with me in the last hour. Thank you, and good night, everyone.